Sexual exploitation, shocking contracts, and untold cruelty. These aren't just harrowing tales to make you shudder, they're real horrors endured by some of the biggest stars of old Hollywood. Here are 20 nasty things done to old Hollywood actors. Number 20. The Punishment Box. Number 20 on our list takes us to one of the most beloved stars of old Hollywood, Shirley Temple. Rising through the big screen as a global sensation despite her young age, Shirley Temple never failed to charm audiences with her sweet persona and remarkable talent. However, little did we know that behind the scenes, her experience was anything but sweet. During the production of her films, especially the Baby Burlesque series, Temple and her fellow child actors were subjected to shocking forms of abuse. From an insane amount of work hours to demanding scripts, poor old, or should I say young Shirley, went through a whole lot. Where do we even start? Yes, you know how kids naturally have shorter attention spans compared to adults and love to play? This makes working with them in Hollywood a unique challenge. They need gentle care and lots of patience to keep them focused and motivated. It's the job of the adults to create a comfortable environment where they can feel safe and still have fun while doing their best work. Except the studio heads did anything but that. One of the most disturbing practices at that time was the use of the punishment box, a windowless black booth where misbehaving children were forced to sit on a solid block of ice for extended periods. Time was money, and they didn't care about anything else. Instead of being gentle, they kept the kids there to keep them in line, and one can only imagine the psychological toll it took on the kids. The only relief was if Temple herself claimed she was lucky enough not to have any lasting damage because of it. But who's to say other kids didn't? The treatment she and the other kids endured as child actors is a haunting reminder of the dark side of old Hollywood, and it only gets worse from here.
Ship, lollipop, it's a night trip. Into bed you hop and dream away.
Number 19. Child sexualization. If you're soft-hearted, look away. What you're about to hear next is one of the most disgusting things about old Hollywood, and sadly, Shirley Temple faced it too. Remember when Shirley broke into the industry? Of course you do. From ads to customized merchandise, including dolls, clothing, and household items, she was all up in everyone's faces, but in a good way. She was a proper starlet, loved by everyone, including malevolent figures. As crazy as this sounds, the disgusting sexualization began in her first credited role, a baby burlesque film called War Babies. Did the producers consider the fact that a 3-year-old shouldn't be playing a prostitute named Charmaine? Of course not, they didn't care. And how about the feature film Bright Eyes, where she sings the song On the Good Ship Lollipop? While wearing an uncomfortably short baby doll dress, Shirley was weirdly carried, held, and touched by a group of about a dozen grown men. And a similar case also happened in the 1936 film Poor Little Rich Girl. It is a harrowing example of early Hollywood pedophilia and how it was normalized in the industry. At 12, she had a meeting with MGM producer Arthur Freed, who exposed his private parts to her. That sick man thereafter produced hits like The Wizard of Oz and Singing in the Rain instead of being punished. And this was not the last time she would have to deal with the filthy pigs of Hollywood. At 17, Shirley was almost sexually assaulted by producer David O. Selznick of Selznick International Pictures. I don't even want to imagine what would have happened had she not escaped from his clutches unscathed. The next woman on our list wasn't so lucky.
I suppose you know you broke up my home. I didn't know that you were in a home. When did you get out?
Number 18. Blaming stars for their own failures. Up next on our list is a tragic example of how old Hollywood grossly mistreated one of its brightest stars, Clara Bow, the original It Girl. Hailed as a bombshell beauty and the quintessential sex symbol of the silent film era, one would think Miss Bow was shielded from the sins of old. But alas, not even she could escape the unimaginable challenges both on and off the screen. To start with, her upbringing was far from a bed of roses. She rose to fame from a deeply troubled childhood, where she endured sexual abuse from her father and a schizophrenic mother who once tried to kill her. She had to fight through unspoken adversaries and challenges just to reach the pinnacle of the industry. But her success came at a steep price. Bow's life was plagued by betrayal, including from those closest to her. Her secretary and confidant, Daisy DeVoe, was caught embezzling her money, leading to a sensational trial. During the trial, the press exposed every detail of Bow's private life, cruelly highlighting her struggles with sex, drugs, and alcohol, and exposing her to relentless public scrutiny that eventually led to a severe nervous breakdown in 1931. Did anyone care about her well-being? Of course not. Instead of offering support, Paramount Studios forced Beau to continue working on the film Kick In, despite her deteriorating mental state. They neither cared that she was nursing her mental health, nor was struggling to reach her usual standards. And when the film failed at the box office, the studio blamed Beau and terminated her contract. Yep, you heard that right. They blamed her for the movie's flop and tossed her aside like she was garbage.
Here we are together, but the best of friends must party. So let me sing this parting song from the bottom of my heart.
Number 17, substance abuse. So we've talked about how emotionally and sexualized some of the child actors were often treated within the old school Hollywood system. Unfortunately, that was only the tip of the iceberg. It's sad to say this, but there were absolutely no laws protecting children during the golden age of the industry. Studios were free to exploit their young stars without consequence. The lack of protection encouraged a frequent resort to equally sinister tactics, such as encouraging substance abuse among their young stars to keep them working at an inhumane pace. Judy Garland and Mickey Rooney, two of the era's biggest teen idols, were prime examples of this exploitation. Both Garland and Rooney were the faces of MGM during their teenage years, starring in 9 films together between 1937 and 1943. From a young age, they were thrust into a relentless cycle of filming, with MGM determined to capitalize on their popularity. To meet the studio's demands, the pair were given amphetamines to stay awake and energized during long shoots, sometimes spanning up to 72 hours. At night, they were given sleeping pills to rest, only to be woken up a few hours later with another dose of amphetamines to start the day all over again. Crazy, right? The toll of the drug regimen was devastating, and the duo never recovered from it. Garland, who began taking these substances as a teenager, battled addiction for the rest of her life. Her struggles with substance abuse led to numerous suicide attempts and, ultimately, her tragic death from an overdose at the age of 47. Although Rooney lived longer, he also grappled with addiction and financial ruin, filing for bankruptcy and dying with little to his name, an unfitting death for someone of his caliber. Number 16, zero privacy. It's no longer news that modern-day celebrities often struggle to maintain their privacy. They can't even have dinner with their significant other or even walk their pets on the sidewalks without millions of paparazzi tailing them and taking a gazillion shots from every angle. But guess what? The golden age of Hollywood was no less intrusive. Some may say it was even worse. The studio system, which dominated the entertainment industry from the 1920s through the 1950s, saw actors not just as performers but as valuable assets whose every action reflected on the powerful moguls who controlled their contracts. And to ensure that their stars stayed in line, studios went as far as hiring spies to monitor their behavior. Yeah, it's as crazy as it sounds. Mickey Rooney and Judy Garland, two of MGM's biggest stars, were each assigned friends, who were actually spies hired by the studio. But while Rooney was aware of the deception in rapid time, Garland was blindsided by the betrayal for years until she discovered that her close friend and rumored lover, Betty Asher, was secretly reporting her every move to MGM. Can you imagine? Asher, who also spied on stars like Lana Turner and Artie Shaw, documented Garland's daily activities, including who she saw, what she ate, and when she went to bed and woke up. Garland was devastated upon learning the truth, recalling that she cried for days after realizing the extent of Asher's betrayal. And guess what? The invasion of privacy didn't stop there. Columbia Studios head Harry Cohn notoriously bugged his studio to eavesdrop on his actors' private conversations, even placing listening devices in dressing rooms. Anyone caught speaking ill of him faced immediate dismissal. Additionally, Sammy Davis Jr.'s relationship with screen icon Kim Novak was so disapproved of by Cohn that he reportedly had organized crime figures threaten Davis to end the affair, demonstrating just how far studios would go to control their stars. Still think Tinseltown is the land of dreams? Well then, wait and see what we've got next. Number 15. Cagney contracts. Similar to the prior point, today's actors often enjoy lucrative and flexible contracts that allow them to pick and choose projects based on their personal and professional interests. For instance, stars like Leonardo DiCaprio have multi-million-dollar deals that often include the freedom to choose projects that align with their artistic vision. This kind of flexibility empowers actors to take on roles that excite them and work with directors and studios they respect. This kind of autonomy, however, is a far cry from the early days of cinema, when actors weren't even the masters of their own destinies thanks to the draconian control studio system that old Hollywood had over its stars. Performers were often bound by long-term contracts, which gave studios nearly complete authority over their careers. The contracts were not only restrictive, but also exploitative, forcing actors to take on roles they didn't want or risk severe penalties. Remember the case of John Gilbert, one of the most celebrated actors of the old era? For the sake of those who have no idea, Gilbert was under contract with MGM, where he was one of their top stars. And things were really going well until the day he refused to follow the studio's orders. Rumors have it that MGM's head, Louis B. Mayer, was personally dissatisfied with Gilbert, which led to the studio giving him poor scripts and sabotaging his roles. The decline in the quality of his films eventually tarnished his reputation, leading to a rapid downfall in his career. The pressure was just too immense. They were expected to churn out movie after movie, often with little regard for their well-being or artistic desires. Worse, actors who refused to comply with the studio's demands were either suspended without pay or even terminated altogether. Bette Davis is a prime example. She was suspended just because she didn't want to play a specific role. But if you're still in doubt that the system prioritized profits over people, here's another painful reminder. Number 14. The price of perfection. Have you ever wondered why so many leading women in old Hollywood all looked pristine and picture perfect? It wasn't just because of their good genes, photogenic nature, or elegance. Studios like MGM saw their stars not as individuals but as cash cows, whose beauty and pristine appearance had to be maintained at all costs to protect their bottom line. This obsession with image meant that actresses were subjected to intense scrutiny and control, with their diets and routines meticulously monitored to ensure they met the industry's demanding standards. But while many women fell victim to this experience, I can't help but feel one woman stands out the most: Judy Garland. When she signed with MGM at just 13 years old, studio head Louis B. Mayer immediately imposed strict control over her diet. Her daily food intake, when she wasn't shooting any roles, was meticulously monitored by studio executives, who would physically remove her food once she reached a predetermined calorie limit. And no, it wasn't for her benefit. They wanted her to be aesthetically pleasing to the senses, just for profit. Her youthful girl-next-door appeal was a significant selling point for the studio, and any deviation from that image threatened to impact their mammoth revenue. And make no mistake, it only got worse. Executives frequently belittled her, calling her a fat little pig with pigtails, and comparing her to a monster. By the time she was 18, Garland's diet consisted of nothing more than black coffee and chicken soup. At some point, she was forced to take diet pills and smoke up to 80 cigarettes a day. Of course, these extreme measures had long-lasting consequences. Garland developed a severe eating disorder that plagued her throughout her life, contributing to her struggles with drug addiction. Looking back, stars like Garland were nothing more than assets whose worth was tied to their ability to maintain an image that kept the profits rolling in.
I detest cheap sentiment.
Number 13. Forced abortions. Contrary to contemporary times where pregnancies are embraced and not discriminated against, in old Hollywood, pregnancy wasn't just frowned upon, it was a career-ending scandal. Star actresses were often forced into secret abortions to preserve their public image, slender build, and of course, the studio's profits. A pregnancy meant months off and even more after labor. The ladies wouldn't have been able to perform the roles assigned to them by the studio, roles that didn't accommodate the realities of motherhood. This dark reality affected many of the biggest names of the time, including Judy Garland, Jean Harlow, and Bette Davis. Garland, despite being married, was coerced into 2 abortions, both arranged by her mother. Harlow was forced to check into a hospital under an assumed name for what was publicly deemed an appendectomy, but was actually an abortion. And Lana Turner's situation was even the worst of all. She had to undergo the procedure in a hotel room without any anesthesia. And just in case you're wondering why these women couldn't refuse, the truth is that the stakes were incredibly high, as refusing to comply meant risking everything. Actresses could face salary cuts or even be blacklisted from the industry, as was the potential fate of Ava Gardner, who was supporting her then broken husband Frank Sinatra, or Bette Davis, who was responsible for her family. They simply couldn't afford the consequences. The only woman I can think of who stood her ground was Loretta Young, who went to extreme lengths to keep her child while maintaining her career. And even then, she used adoption as the cover for her pregnancy with Clark Gable's baby. But if you think you've seen it all, prepare for the shock of your lives with the next one. Number 12. Forbidding marriages. Ladies and gentlemen, during the golden age of Tinseltown, not even personal relationships were spared by the dictating studios, and the likes of Mickey Rooney found this out the hard way. You see, from the first day he broke into the industry, MGM had been heavily investing in Rooney's personal life, For years, they built this wholesome, all-American boy persona. So when he announced his intention to marry Ava Gardner, studio head Louis B. Mayer got furious. He called Rooney into his office and flatly forbade the marriage, believing it would shatter the image they had built for him. It was only when Rooney definitely stood his ground and even threatened to leave the studio if they continued to interfere that Mayer finally backed down and gave his approval for the marriage to happen. But sadly, not all stars could follow suit, including Jean Harlow, Hollywood's original blonde bombshell. As a major MGM asset, Harlow was contractually forbidden from marrying because the studio believed that her status as a sex symbol depended on her being perceived as unattainable. While Harlow did marry twice, both unions were only considered acceptable to the studio because her husbands were an MGM executive and a cameraman. However, when she fell in love with William Powell, a star at rival Paramount Studios, MGM put their foot down and swore to make her life miserable if she proceeded with the union. Her sad, untimely death from a kidney infection made sure of it. For other stars, especially those in interracial relationships, the consequences were even more severe. Kim Novak's romance with Sammy Davis Jr. was strictly forbidden by Columbia Pictures head Harry Cohn, who went so far as to hire mobsters to kidnap and threaten Davis's life if he didn't end the relationship. Under such immense pressure, Davis had to cut ties with Novak, bringing their relationship to a swift and painful end. Number 11. Racial discrimination. Remember when Lena Horne in 1942 made Hollywood history by becoming the first African-American actress to sign a long-term studio contract in Hollywood? At a time when black actors were typically confined to demeaning roles such as slaves, servants, or other racially charged stereotypes, Horne was a groundbreaking figure, seen as the first to be portrayed with a sense of glamour. While many fans and fellow thespians were happy with the groundbreaking achievement, MGM had no intention of giving her the substantial roles she deserved. Yes, they were content to showcase her beauty and talent, but they denied her significant screen time or meaningful roles, fearing backlash from Southern theaters and audiences. Despite her talents and the fact that she was a celebrated singer before entering the film industry, most of her roles in MGM films were brief, often relegated to short musical numbers that could easily be cut when the films were shown in the South. And if it wasn't painfully clear to Horne that she was being discriminated against, it was unmistakably evident when she was denied the role of a mulatto singer in 1951's Showboat, a part she had deeply desired and was well suited for. Although Horne starred in 2 all-black musicals in 1943, she never achieved the same level of success or recognition as her white counterparts. The limitations placed on her career echoed those experienced by other African-American actresses of the era, such as Dorothy Dandridge, who also struggled to break free from the restrictive, racially defined roles available to her. Number 10. Hattie McDaniel's sideline. While Lena Horne faced immense barriers in Hollywood, struggling to secure roles that matched her talent due to the deep-seated racism of the time, she was not alone in her battle. Just 2 years before Horne's record-breaking achievement, Hattie McDaniel made history by becoming the first black person to win an Oscar for her exceptional role in Gone with the Wind. But while this moment should have been a joyous occasion, like Horne, McDaniel's triumph was marred by the harsh realities of racial discrimination in old Hollywood. In spite of her groundbreaking achievement, she was forced to sit separately from her white co-stars at the awards ceremony. Can you imagine how devastated she must have felt? One can't even imagine it. They basically turned one of the most important days of her life and career into yet another painful reminder that her race was viewed as unequal to their white counterparts. No matter how you look at it, the stories of Horne and McDaniel reveal a pattern of systemic racism that countless actors of color faced during that era. I'm only relieved that contemporary times are getting much better. Moving on, let's look at yet another facet of Hollywood's troubling racial history.
Sure, I'm decent.
Number 9. Whitewashing stars. If there's one thing to learn from Hattie McDaniel's shocking experience, it has to be the fact that old Hollywood was particularly condescending to people of color. But hey, it wasn't the only beacon. Have you ever heard of the story of Margarita Carmen Cancino? No, alright then. What about Rita Hayworth? Yes? Okay, what if I told you both of these people were actually the same? Born to a Spanish Roma father and an Irish-American mother, Cancino was initially typecast in Hollywood as an exotic foreigner and relegated to minor roles in B-movies. When her contract with Fox wasn't renewed, she turned to Columbia Pictures, but under the studio's direction, Harry Cohn orchestrated a complete transformation to make her, endearing to white audiences. and so it began. She lost weight, dyed her naturally dark hair red, and endured painful electrolysis to raise her hairline, a procedure that was intended to erase her ethnic appearance. The final piece was to change her name to Rita Hayworth. This drastic reinvention worked, and she shot to stardom with record speed, becoming a symbol of glamour and sex appeal of the 1940s. Nicknamed the Love Goddess, Hayworth thereafter starred in 61 films and was later ranked number 19 on the American Film Institute's list of the greatest stars of all time, all at the cost of totally erasing her heritage and altering her natural beauty. It's truly crazy to think about. The same woman who only featured in B-rolls suddenly became one of the leading figures of her time after she whitened up. She would have been a star nonetheless, but she was never given the chance because of nasty discrimination. But guess what? Hollywood's penchant for transforming actors to fit its narrow definitions of beauty wasn't only limited to Hayworth. Columbia Studios also pushed Marilyn Novak to adopt the name Kim Novak. Also, 20th Century Fox famously rebranded Norma Jean Mortensen as Marilyn Monroe, a name she reportedly never liked. Number 8. Sex parties. History will always remember MGM's 1937 sales convention as one of the grandest events of its time, filled with glitz, glamour, and star-studded appearances. The night of May 5th was particularly memorable, with performances by iconic figures like Laurel and Hardy and the Dandridge sisters, all set against the backdrop of lavish entertainment and an open bar. It was the place to be, the party of all parties. But beneath its glamorous surface lurked a darker reality for many women involved in the event. And no, you're not going to believe your ears. In a perverse industry where its leading figures were basically untouchable and above the law, women extras were particularly vulnerable. These women, lacking the protection of contracts that more prominent actresses had, were often treated as disposable commodities, aka garbage. They were sometimes invited, or rather recruited, to attend these grand parties under the pretense of being party favors. Without much power or protection, they could easily find themselves in situations far beyond what they had anticipated. Sadly, this was the case of Patricia Douglas, a dancer and movie extra. She was one of 120 women who had been told they were heading to a locational shoot. But upon arrival, the reality was starkly different. The event was nothing more than a ruse and a nightmare for the innocent Douglas. She was pursued by a drunken salesman, forced to consume alcohol, and then brutally raped. And it only got worse from there. After the assault, Patricia Douglas, unlike the others, bravely reported the rape, filing a lawsuit against MGM and the salesman. Did she win, though? Sadly, no. The powerful figures in Hollywood quickly moved to suppress her case. MGM, with its significant influence, manipulated the press to downplay the incident and discredit Douglas. Witnesses were silenced, evidence was tampered with, and the case was nothing short of an embarrassment. And guess what? Douglas lost on all counts. Despite her best efforts, she didn't get the justice she craved. The trauma from the event, coupled with the systemic silencing, left her devastated. She retired from the industry and struggled with many of her relationships in life as a result of the mental and emotional trauma she experienced from the rape and subsequent smear campaign by MGM. But while the aftermath of Patricia Douglas's case reveals the oppressive power dynamics that defined Hollywood, where women were treated as disposable objects rather than respected professionals, it's sadly just one occurrence. Up next is another shocking reveal that's just as irritating. Number 7. Casting couch. Ladies and gentlemen, the abuse of power extends far beyond Douglas's case. In Hollywood's hierarchy, women were clearly treated as an underclass. From casting and production to their private dealings with stars and studio heads, women faced constant propositions, assaults, and the assumption that they were sexually available. Ever heard of the term casting couch? It's one of Hollywood's worst-kept secrets. Many actresses were pressured or outright required to perform sexual favors in exchange for roles. Powerful studio heads and directors, who wielded immense control over careers, exploited the desperation of women who sought to succeed in the industry. And it wasn't just the newcomers. Janice Page, a great actress of her time, was once introduced by an MGM director to go on a date with a man she didn't know. During the encounter, the man attempted to rape her. Luckily, she managed to escape, but the traumatic event stayed with her for decades. She only revealed the incident in her later years, sharing her story in an essay for The Hollywood Reporter at the age of 95. And don't even get me started on how Judy Garland, another star shaped by Hollywood's toxic environment, experienced sexual harassment from Louis B. Mayer, the powerful but sick mind behind MGM. According to multiple accounts, Mayer enjoyed groping Garland on set while she was still a teenager, further illustrating the pervasive culture of the Golden Age. But before we go into the next nasty events on our list, If you've found these deep dives into Hollywood's hidden and troubling history compelling, why don't you subscribe and turn on the post notifications? That way you'll be in the loop and never miss out on our latest videos, where we uncover more shocking stories from the golden age of cinema and beyond. Number 6. Sex for roles. As sad as this may sound, almost all female actors in Tinseltown have experienced a form of harassment, body shaming, sexism, or prejudice in one way or another. So often disguised as constructive feedback, women have endured bullying, criticism, and diminishment regarding their physical appearances. They've been coerced into dressing in ways that make them uncomfortable. Worse still, some have faced harassment from predatory figures abusing their power in the industry. Now, Thandie Newton may not exactly cut it as a golden age actress, but I can't help but recall her story. We're talking about a woman who has built an impressive career over the years, captivating audiences with powerful performances in films like Crash, Mission Impossible 2, and critically acclaimed TV series Westworld, where she portrayed Maeve Millay, a role that has earned her widespread recognition and awards. Wondering where we're headed with this? Well, for all her talent and grace on screen, Newton's journey to stardom has also been marred by deeply troubling experiences that expose the ugly side of the entertainment industry. In a candid interview with W Magazine, Newton recounted a particularly harrowing audition early in her career. During this audition, an unnamed director subjected her to degrading requests, including filming inappropriate footage under her skirt. Newton complied, believing the presence of a female casting director meant the situation was legitimate. However, she later discovered that the footage had been shared among the director's friends during poker games, exploiting her for their entertainment. So you see, the story of Thandie Newton's harrowing audition experience sheds light on the persistent issues of exploitation in Hollywood, a reality that has touched even the most respected and talented actresses in the industry. But if you thought Newton's ordeal was disturbing, brace yourself for another unsettling tale from the life of Margie Gyllenhaal, a versatile actress who, despite her undeniable talent and success, faced her own battle against Hollywood's insidious demands.
Forced to spend their lives on domestic chores, and their prudish and selfish husbands who are unwilling or unable to make love to them properly.
Number 5. Sex It Up. Margie Gyllenhaal, born in the 1970s, has earned widespread acclaim for her ability to fully immerse herself in all kinds of roles. From her compelling performance as Lee Holloway in Secretary, to her captivating work in Sherry Baby, and even on DC's mega blockbuster The Dark Knight, Gyllenhaal has constantly proved herself as one of the most formidable actresses of her generation. Just give her a script and watch her ace it like she was born for it. Yet, like many women who came before her, even with such an impressive resume, Gyllenhaal was not even close to being immune to the industry's objectification and degrading practices. During an audition that should have focused on her talent, Gyllenhaal was instead pressured to sex it up to fit the role's expectations. Despite her attempts to conform by changing into a more revealing outfit, she was still rejected. The experience left her disillusioned, highlighting the harsh reality that in Hollywood, even the most accomplished actresses can be reduced to their appearance. But if you think that was shocking, the next story on our list will make you question the very fabric of Hollywood itself. Stay tuned for a revelation that will have you questioning everything you thought you knew. Number 4. Disturbing nude images of adolescent children. Let's be real, guys. No Hollywood duo has ever made an entrance quite like Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting. As teenagers, they had the whole world mesmerized by their amazing performance in the 1968 adaptation of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Directed by Franco Zeffirelli, the film was a massive commercial success for many reasons. It became a staple in secondary schools and earned 4 Academy Award nominations. Moreover, the undeniable chemistry between its stars, Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting, who even dated briefly after the film, helped the movie surpass all expectations by a wide margin. Alas, it was anything but innocent. The film had a shocking script demand that stirred controversy. Olivia and Whiting were to share a bedroom scene that included images of the pair being naked. Yep, we're talking bare breasts and derriere all out in the open. But it even gets worse. In a lawsuit filed against Paramount for sexually exploiting and distributing nude images of adolescent children, the actors revealed that Zeffirelli had assured them that there would be no nudity in the film and that they would wear flesh-colored undergarments for the bedroom scene. However, this turned out to be a lie meant to exploit them. In the final days of shooting, the director allegedly pressured them to perform nude scenes with body makeup, insisting that the picture would fail otherwise. And in case you need any reminder, the pair were still children at the time. Olivia Hussey was 15 at the time and Leonard Whiting was only a year older. It is profoundly upsetting to hear about the exploitation Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting suffered at the hands of the director and studio during the filming of Romeo and Juliet. The fact that they were manipulated and coerced into performing nude scenes against their will and at a young age just further highlights the troubling pattern of exploitation within the industry. To the sick heads, money was the only important thing. It didn't matter what the actors thought of it or how appropriate the scenes in question were. As far as fetching money, it was all good to go. It raises serious concerns about the ethics and integrity of those in positions of power within the industry. If such exploitation can happen so easily and without consequences, it prompts the question of how many other actors have faced similar mistreatment in the past.
200 songs in 5 days, and I never made one mistake in 11 weeks.
Number 3, Kathie Lee Gifford's harrowing ordeal. Singer, songwriter, author, and well-known television personality Kathie Lee Gifford is well celebrated for her long tenure as co-host of Live with Regis and Kathie Lee, and later, Today with Hoda Kotb. With a career spanning several decades, Gifford has made significant contributions to television and entertainment, becoming a beloved figure to many fans. But although I'd always wished for a different outcome, the truth is that Miss Kathie was yet just another victim of the deplorable side of Hollywood's long history. During a discussion with co-host Hoda Kotb, Gifford shared a painful personal experience from when she was 21 years old. She recounted being invited to a producer's home under the pretense of discussing her career, only to be subjected to a distressing and demeaning situation where the producer forced her to watch himself masturbate. In sharing her story, Gifford also highlighted the emotional and psychological impact of such abuse. She described feeling demeaned and ashamed, expressing gratitude that the situation did not escalate to rape. In addition to her personal account, Gifford also addressed the broader issue of sexual misconduct in Hollywood, specifically commenting on Harvey Weinstein and her disappointment in the allegations placed against him. Number 2, casting couch. Remember what we talked about regarding the infamous casting couch in Hollywood and how it's been a dark and disturbing reality in the entertainment industry, where powerful producers and directors would demand sexual favors from aspiring actors in exchange for roles? Well, Lisa Rinna, an actress known for her roles in popular TV shows like Days of Our Lives and Melrose Place, was no stranger to the casting couch. In fact, her case was so bad that it deeply traumatized the early stages of her career and frankly ever since. At the age of 24, Lisa found herself in a situation that many young actors have tragically experienced. She was offered a major role in a big TV series, but the offer came with a disturbing condition. The producer asked her to bend over a chair and perform a sexual act in exchange for the part. Lisa, understandably horrified, refused the proposition and walked away in tears. And as you'd expect, the role, of course, was never hers. This encounter, though it happened many years ago, has never left Lisa's mind. She later admitted that she still thinks about that producer and the traumatic incident every day. In a way, it's a painful reminder that the passage of time doesn't always heal wounds, especially when they are inflicted by those in positions of power. The only silver lining, albeit little, is that her story highlights the courage it takes to say no, even when the stakes are high, and the lasting impact such experiences can have on a person's life and career.
Here, it's yours.
Thank you, Phil.
So, what do you think? You want to go out on Friday night?
I'd rather have...
Number 1, stalk cum murder. When it comes to the worst things that have been done to Hollywood actors in its history, it's not always the studios that are responsible. Sometimes the danger comes from the most unexpected places, people you never knew even existed. This brings us to the top entry on our list, a tragic event that ranks high not only because of its gruesome nature, but also because of the chilling fact that the victim had been stalked for years before her untimely death. Rebecca Schaeffer was an up-and-coming actress in the late 1980s, most known for her starring role in the beloved TV show My Sister Sam and other hits. At just 21 years old, she was on the brink of becoming a household name, but tragically, her life was brutally cut short by a deranged fan named Robert Bardo, who had been stalking her for 3 years. Bardo's obsession with Schaeffer became increasingly dangerous as he fixated on her every move. Eventually, he managed to track down her home address, a violation of her privacy that had devastating consequences. On a day when she was eagerly awaiting for the script that would become the iconic film Pretty Woman, Bardo showed up at her doorstep, and in a horrific turn of events, he shot Rebecca in the chest, killing her instantly. This tragic incident not only shocked Hollywood, but also led to significant legal changes, including the enactment of the America's first anti-stalking laws in 1990, laws that now protect countless individuals from suffering a similar fate. Bardo was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, but the damage was already done. The life of one of Hollywood's most promising actresses of her time was snuffed away. Feeling intrigued? Good, because the journey doesn't end there. Check out the video currently displaying on your screen to find out more shocking facts about your favorite actors.